Welcome, Martijn Lampert from Amsterdam. Welcome in our 35th coffee break. How are you doing?
Yes, doing well. Well, great to be with you in this coffee break environment and to meet all of you digitally.
Yeah, yeah. You recently launched a new report of a study on global trends about Gen Z. It's amazing. I met you in Amsterdam like some months ago. I was like impressed by the data and like really the system you created to do all these analysis. But maybe explain a little bit to the people watching what you are exactly doing there.
Yes. Okay. Well, already at the end of the 90s of the last century, I was fascinated by patterns of meaning and values, and I graduated on the ancient battle between Dionysus and Apollo, two Greek gods, and how that plays out in Dutch society. It's about archetypes, and Dionysus was the god of wine and of fertility and of nature and everything that you cannot control. And and Apollo was the god of the light and the ruling class. And they're always battling within people, but within societies. And I measured that. So I made a word thermometer. So I had Dionysian words, I had Apollonian words like the law or rationality or control, and Dionysian words like playfulness, ecstasy, theater. And you can let people score on that. And then you see what they value more. And then you see that there are groups of people in society and that they are also sometimes in, well, battles, you could say, of minds also. And this methodology, it works really well. So then I came to work with Mode of Action, a Dutch-based research agency where I've set up with the team the mentality research program, looking at values and trends and all that. And that, evolved for a lot. I wrote two books about the young generation, and then we decided to take this approach global. And we do this for amazing clients. And now it's also a separate company already for 4 years. Clients like Greenpeace, UNICEF, the United Nations, Unilever, Procter and Gamble. And we have a massive database that we can learn a lot from if you ask the right questions, of course. And you
Yeah.
have the statisticians and a great team who's also able to sell this type of product because, we're a company.
Yeah.
But throughout time you learn a lot, and these trends are also very impactful.
Yeah, and this study is on nearly 300,000 people. Now, one of the things with this kind of studies is that people kind of blame, like that you put people into boxes or generations into boxes. What's your reaction on that?
Yeah, well, that's not the aim of this work. The aim of this work is to understand how international society is changing.
Yeah.
And for that, you need categories. You need to set criteria for your samples, for example, because it has to fit with the census figures of the national samples in all these 20 countries. And there are national bureaus of statistics who say, well, this is the age category range in the country, or this is the regional spread of the population, or education, or gender. So when doing this research, you have to be representative for these criteria. And then, but doing the analysis, of course, then you are interested in comparing countries and how age groups differ. But within age groups, of course, differences are also huge. But if you want to see how society is evolving, and that's what we are focusing on,
Yeah.
then, if you just look at everybody added up together, you have 300,000 people, you see nothing. So you divide it up between the years, for example, 2014, 16, 18, and go on. And then you see divisions, and then you see trends. Or you look at emerging countries versus advanced countries, or you look at young people and older people. And then you really get to the depth of it without stereotyping a single person. But the aim is to see like the forest through the trees. That's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. And in this study, I saw that you made like a difference between like the upcoming industries. There we have Brazil, China, and Russia. One of the questions I have there, like India is not there. Is there a reason?
Yes, it's there as well. So we have a lot of emerging economies in the data. We also have Mexico, we have South Africa, Turkey.
Uh-huh.
Definitely, yeah. But when we look at the trends, it's very interesting to see the differences between more advanced, the richer countries, economies, with many European countries, Australia, for example, Japan, Canada. If you take these together and you look at the emerging countries, there are similarities, but also huge differences.
Yeah.
And if you want, I can share a bit more about what we find.
Yeah, maybe it's interesting for the people to see like how you work, well, how you show people like. So let me try to bring like one of your graphs.
Yes.
Yeah. So this one.
Yes. Yeah. So this one is like the summary, and after this we can go into the details of how we do this. But what we see happening, and we do research amongst people from 18 to 70 years old in 20 countries. We have data going back to 2014. And since then, we have 7 waves of international fieldwork, in total 300,000 interviews. So what is happening then beneath the surface? Because we know that above the surface, the world is in chaos, in crisis. About the climate crisis, a war going on, economic crisis coming up, the COVID pandemic and all that. But what we focus on is how people's inner drivers might be shifting. And that's why we see difference happening. And we look beneath the surface with a values-based methodology. We look at values of people. As I already told you about the Greek archetypes that I studied 20 years ago, it's a similar approach. And what we see happening is that amongst young people globally, so 18 to 24 years old now, Generation Z, increasingly they are pessimistic. They feel let down by society, unable to develop and thrive. And we have to take into account that half of the world population is under 30 years old. That's something that we in the West often tend to forget. And 9 out of 10 young people come from emerging economies. So this is where, if you really want to look at the future and study the future, you have to focus on these young people and understanding their drivers. Now, the message from this research is that their values are changing. And in these emerging economies, we see that young people are increasingly becoming emancipated and are striving for freedom from patriarchy. And generally, these countries are more conservative than rich countries. But what we, for example, see, let's take Russia as an example. In 2014, 66% of Russian young people, 18 to 24, said the father should be the head of the household. Conservative profile. In 2022, it's 50%. So it's going down. Still a conservative country. But these young people are more open to democracy, to being open-minded. And it's not all young people in Russia are that, but there's this shift going on. The same shift we see happening in, for example, Brazil, in China. And those are expressed also in, you see protests in Iran against a very repressive theocratic regime that is not able to control the young generation anymore, because this young generation is emancipated. In Russia, you see increasing repression. In China, you see it, increasing repression. And I interpret it in the light of values of young people who are the best connected generation ever in human history, the highest educated generation ever in human history. And they can find their information on the internet, even if it's censored with VPN connections and all that. So they are longing for freedom. And that is why there is a clash between the system that is not representing them and these young people rising up.
Yeah, maybe we go to an example that people can see graphically. Maybe you explain this graph.
Definitely, and everyone can download this report at glocalities.com/trends 2022, and there you will find the underlying trends also visualized. So here you see the statement from our research, for example, on gender role flexibility. I think it's perfectly all right when men show their feminine side. And that's an indicator of freedom and emancipation, and we have more of those. But this is just an example. You see that worldwide, people are increasingly agreeing to this statement. So it's a 5-point Likert scale. 1 is strongly disagree, 5 is strongly agree, and you see it rising from 3.40 to 3.59 overall, which is a very significant and steady rise throughout time. If we then look at the age category, you see in red the line of 18 to 24 years old, and those people now in 2022 are Gen Z. And if we compare them to young people of 18 to 24 years old in 2014, you see that this rise in gender role flexibility is even more steep, and that they are the front runners in this compared to the older generation, for example, in blue, where it's more stable. It's also rising, but amongst the young generation, you see the gap also between the generations is growing, is more increasing. And upcoming economies are catching up on this topic that are generally more conservative to advanced economies. So this is what I mean, and this is how we do this research. So yeah, this is just to explain, Jim, about how it works.
Yeah, I went through your whole report, and I must say, like, I'm really impressed by the clarity of all the graphs, and also the similarity with the kind of the scan that I developed. So you see that there's like a shift going on towards spirituality, toward more consciousness, etc. Now maybe we go through like the 6 main trends that we see, and then maybe there you can reflect on, and then I look at my paper here. Like the first trend is like there's an evolution towards open-minded, being more open-minded, and towards tolerance.
Yes, and I just gave an example about that. And this is strongly driven by the younger age cohorts who are emancipating, and with older cohorts following at slower pace. But I think also the web revolution has enabled this quest for curiosity for a lot. Young people are generally, of course, throughout history, they are the most open-minded, the most curious people, because older people tend to be more stuck in this is how it works here. But young people, they are getting into these systems and think, hey, I think this can be more efficient, or that can be different. And that is increasing still. So yeah, I think that's very challenging, and I think we need that to overcome the multitude of crises that the world is now in. And so this is, I think, a very healthy development.
Yeah.
The second trend is, maybe you see it as well, Jim, in the workplace.
Yeah. It's clear, like that evolution. For me, it already started like when the millennials were, entering the workplace. So this is just like going on and just like confirming what was going on with the millennials. Because for me, I think like each generation has kind of like a reaction on the previous one, or they confirm it, or like they just like go in resistance of what is happening. And I think like a lot of resistance is there against like the toxic, dominant, old school philosophies from the past that is not tolerated anymore, nor in the workplace, and that is changing like everywhere. And you see that also in the decrease of traditional values. So there again, we go to you.
Indeed. Yeah, that's the second trend. So the importance of patriarchy, traditional values is fading. You see that also that young people tend to get less children, for example, want to be more free. And mainly, of course, young women also are becoming higher educated. And so these trends are all reinforcing. And the generational gap in traditional values in upcoming economies where you have a lot of conservative, that's widening. So I foresee a lot more tension even between the generations in these countries. Like we had this cultural revolution in the more rich countries, the Western countries. We had that in the 60s and the 70s. Now we see similar things happening in these massive emerging economies. And these protests on the street are only like the tip of the iceberg, but and this is an evolution that is so important for the workplace, for communities, for the whole sustainability transition, and we need to look beneath the surface and connect with people's authentic drivers and passions and ambitions in order to overcome all the challenges that the world is facing now. But the good news is that this young generation is the highest educated ever in human history, the best connected generation, and that they have the vitality and the drive to contribute. However, the older generations need to be the best mentors ever for these young people and not get in their way. And that is exactly what is happening. And that is, this analysis contributes to that understanding. Yeah. Because I also know that all generations are not necessarily bad or do not want to facilitate young people. No, they're stuck in an old way of thinking. So we have to help them and learn, teach them a bit how the world is evolving and how they can also have fun in teaching young people. I'm
currently still in India. So you see here like really like the old caste system, like suppressing like mainly the women. Yeah, that is not like tolerated anymore, and only the people who have like kind of fear, they don't want to lose their jobs here because here like there are not more people than there are jobs. So based on that fear, they just accept it, but inside they don't accept it for sure. The women, they are like, I see like I estimate like maybe 20% of the women, they are like really breaking out now, and they want to give like a signal. But with that fear, we come to the topic number 3, and that's anxiety and pessimism. How do you explain this? Like maybe explain what is going on, and then maybe give an explanation where is this coming from.
Sure. So, this is heartbreaking to see, but more and more young people feel that the future holds nothing for them. That has risen from 40 to 47% amongst young people, and that's a lot, almost half. That has to do with the multiple crises in the last few years, including also the COVID pandemic that has put a lot of people, and of course also young people who want to develop and connect and all that, in isolation. And young people need to be embedded in a larger ecosystem and in networks in order to develop and to thrive and to be mentally also well. Well-being is very important. And the world is not, the current systems are not facilitating their thriving. And when things get in the way of you fulfilling your mission in life or your soul purpose or whatever you call it, then you feel depleted and you get depressed. And that's exactly what's happening. So we see that more and more young people feel alienated from society. So I feel let down by society, for example. That's one of the statements and indicators that we use. People are also worried about the damage that humans cause to the planet and the climate crisis, about the economy, about human rights violations. The young people globally, in their top lists of worries, score human rights violations, including sexual harassment and abuse. And that's very high scoring. So that's very telling about the situation that many women, young women, are also in. And that is, of course, preventing them to thrive. That's causing a lot of trauma. And young people also very much worry about extreme poverty, about the climate crisis. So it's not only the personal situation that prevents them from thriving. No, it's also the societal and the larger situation in the world. So these people are getting more and more anxious about this. And that's also why there are also protests coming up and all that. Whilst at the same time, these young people have the future. They should be the most optimistic of the world, you know. This is totally wrong, what's happening now. And I hope this report and this study shows that and helps shift attitudes also in leadership and towards new types of leadership. And I think new leaders should be taught that this is happening and also how they can be the best mentors of the employees and of the people in their communities. Because no one wants a world in which everyone is depressed, you know. That's not funny, and that's not thriving, and that's not what we are here for, I think.
Yeah. Is that the explanation why, and that's then trend number 4, why these people like to spend money and to have fun and enjoy life? Is it kind of an escape that having that money?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're in a world in which you're not able to develop your talents to the fullest, and some people are, I'm not saying that this is general for everyone, no, but it's more than it used to be. So we see that with this emancipation coming up, also lots of taboos are going away. So having fun is more important. That's also what we saw in the West in the 60s and the 70s. The people were breaking free and they wanted to experiment and have fun and all that. So I think that's partly a natural development of loosening traditional values. However, of course, below that, there's a deeper search for meaning and connectedness. And if people are also in the survival types of situations, of course, they think that money is the shortcut to a better life. And actually, it is. Of course, if you're really deep down in extreme poverty, money makes a lot of difference. So this is how I explain these trends as well. But the main challenge is that if young people in emerging economies are going to spend like people in the West used to spend and focus on materialism, then that's very bad for our planet. So we have to counterbalance that with facilitating young people in finding meaning in life and to thrive and to fulfill their hopes and dreams and their ambitions and all that. And in the end, we know from happiness research that that is way more important than only getting a raise. That's not fulfilling at the deepest level.
Yeah. Now, what surprised me in the report, like a little bit now I still understand like a little bit better, but on one side they are looking for freedom, and on the other side they are like looking for like structure and like kind of a predictable life and an organized life and like safety. So I feel like there like might be some conflicts, like in one way, the freedom, and in the other way, like needing a company to provide them the safety and the structure. What's your reaction on that?
Yes, that's something that we see across the generations. So that's not necessarily only the case for the young people that are looking for safety and structure, because the world is becoming a less safe place, also with the waging war and with climate crisis and all that. So that is, I think, like a hygiene factor. There has to be peace. There has to be stability. There has to be economic opportunities for everyone. And if that's not there, people get into a survival mode. But below that, you see this values change of emancipation that the West already experienced in the 60s and the 70s, and now masses of young people in emerging economies are developing in the same direction, also due to transparency and interconnectedness and science, technology, the web, all of it.
Yeah.
And that goes way across borders. So if political systems are, of course, organized mainly like countries, and administrations, governments, etc. But this is like a global development.
Yeah. And then for me, it was like rather logical to see that political engagement was increasing for this generation.
Yeah, well, this is no more nuanced. So indeed, political engagement is going up, political interest, but not necessarily so strong amongst the young people. Because many young people, so the older generations are going steeper up in political interest because they have vested interest to protect, while the youngest generation feels for a lot disconnected from the political system. So, as I said, 50% of the world population is below 30 years old, but only amongst parliamentarians globally, that's UN research, 2.6% of parliamentarians are below 30 years old. Half of the population is, and only 2.6% of parliamentarians. This is the huge disconnect between the political system as it is, and young people are not interested in politics because it's not representing them, whilst their future is at stake. So what we do see is increased activism amongst young people. They are the rebels standing up. But this needs to be facilitated also by political systems, and young people need to be let in and mentored to become the future leaders. Should be represented in political system. That's not happening.
Yeah, and then the last trend is like, and I guess like that will conflict like also a lot in traditional organizations, is the shift towards like more spirituality, meaning also art. What's your idea?
Yes, that's so clear in our research that young generation, mainly then in advanced economies, are also looking for purpose and quality of life. And there's like a trend also of quiet quitting. So that if there's a disconnect with what the employer brings, then young people think, well, if I have some free time, that's best. So this focus on art, on vitality, on creativity, that is rising amongst the young people. And interestingly enough, in mostly secular countries, rich countries are more secular. There, amongst the young generation, interest in spirituality is rising from 30 to 40%, and that is quite an increase throughout these years. And you see that happening in a focus on mindfulness. If you look in the bookstores, people are interested in hypnosis, in getting deeper within meditation and all that. And there they might find more balance. It's also healthy to prevent stress and burnouts and all that. So people are trying to rebalance the inner and the outer world and to find like wholeness. And that is in Western culture where there's a lot of focus in the neoliberal system on rationality, making profit, but that is devoid of meaning, that their meaning is often lacking and people feel depleted. There, the interest in new forms of spirituality is rising, whereas in emerging economies, there we see different trends. Also, it's rising, but young people are less interested in the traditional religiosity, because that's oftentimes also repressive and sometimes patriarchal. So this is why making this distinction between these two types of economies is very helpful. And I encourage you all to just download the report at glocalities.com/trends 2022, so you can delve into it and look at what's happening in and see if it resonates also within your organization. If you can help the young people and have a meaningful talk about this also with your colleagues. It has implications for marketing, for policy, for HR, in many ways.
Yeah. Are there any more details that you want to share, like about the trends, the evolutions that you're seeing?
Well, I think we have already said a lot. I would say don't be blinded by only what appears in the news media, because there's a lot of negativity there, and that sells, of course. And it's oftentimes not looking what's happening in inner values and beneath the surface. And I think that needs a bit of counterbalancing, and also to have the talk about purpose and deeper meaning and the soul, because that's where a lot of motivation comes from, and that's lacking in a lot of organizations. And I think that is the way to move forward, and also to solve the huge challenges of these times, like the climate crisis. We need all the talents on board. We cannot waste any talent. And if people are pushed back into extreme poverty, or are not participating in the political process, that's really a loss. And we cannot afford that as humanity at these times. Yeah. But I believe, as Martin Luther King said, the arc of morality bends towards justice. So there is hope, because I see that amongst this young generation that is going through distressing times, also hopeful trends are evolving that can help us solve the challenges, the crisis. So I regard them, actually, if we help them, as the carriers of hope for a better future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if the people are watching, are looking for the report, we will put it like in the comment box again on LinkedIn, that they can download it. Thank you very much, Martijn, for being here, for your expertise and your deep study on like all the trends globally. If there are people looking for a study, for trend study, whatever study, one address, Glocalities in Amsterdam. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jim, and also appreciation for your marvelous work and the models that you have built.
Yeah,
for steering also, because there are a lot of intersections, and that's very interesting to see that you help organizations step into these type of developments also, and understand that.
Yeah,
because that's where it starts. It starts with awareness. It starts with understanding.
Yeah, and that is one of the things, that is one of my goals, to link your study to the things that I see, and to prove it in a scientific way. To convince like even the most traditional thinking person that we can change the world in the positive way.
That's a great challenge. Let's take it on.
Yeah, we speak soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.